Hey, Warren, my recommendation, if you can close your Outlook so you're just not getting those mail notifications.
That's a good idea. Thanks, Bill. Okay. You guys should be able to see my screen at this point. If you cannot, please let me know.
We can see it.
Okay. Anyone says that they can't see it, let me know. Okay. So our basic topics for today, for the webinar, is a little bit of an intro. We're going to cover the fact that I'm recording this, so that way, in case you have to drop off or you see some things that you want to share with your colleagues, you'll have access to the recording. We're going to spend about 30 minutes total on version 18. So version 18 is the version that came out last week. And it is overall a gigantic leap forward with Apex and what we're trying to accomplish. We'll walk around, see what's new. Then we're going to run through a couple of scenarios. We're going to cover a couple of custom dashboards that have been put together. This bottom one down here, this remote user 1 and 2, is put together by Dave. So I want to cover up on that. Then we're going to talk a bit about how we build custom dashboards. And I want to spend about 15 minutes on it, but we can go into a lot more depth. You can see in here I've got questions set for 15 minutes, kind of in the middle, but this idea is really spread throughout. So when you want to stop and interrupt, don't feel like you have to wait till this point, though I will pause there briefly in case people haven't asked enough questions. And then we're going to talk about the Gigastore and go over some Gigastore basics, how to configure trending, and then the last 10 minutes we'll talk about new product requests, in other words, things that you'd like to see in the product, or any remaining questions. So that's the basic plan. Before we get rolling here, any comments or questions about this, about what we're doing? Okay, fantastic. We are about 2 minutes behind my plan. So what you're looking at now is Observer Apex. This is our demo lab, and this is all version 18. And what should pop out immediately to you is we've got a couple extra fields down here, because what version 18 does is it takes not only the typical packet capture and packet side that we at Viavi have always had, but it also brings in together our flow component too. And so if you've got Gigaflow, what we do is we incorporate that data just as another data source, and I'm going to show you that, into the Apex environment. So it's all there at a click of the fingers. So you can see we've got our standard site performance up here. End user experience, because we're not moving away from that. That is a staple that we're going to stick with, and it's the usual thing that you've seen before. It gives you the site that we're looking at and identifies what domain we see problems in. So with a score of 0.5, you've got a packet loss and retransmissions preventing connection setup. We're not recording a lot of problems with client server application. This is your main culprit showing up in red. We do have a VoIP performance right off the top too, where we're going to look at the MOS scores that we're measuring for each one of these sites. And down here, this site utilization and site interfaces, this is where the Gigaflow information is coming from. So if you don't have Gigaflow, let me know. Let's talk about it, because this is the thing that, as we go through the scenarios, as we go through the setup, you're going to start to get a lot of value out of, especially when we start talking about VoIP troubleshooting and showing class of service, or when we start looking at AS numbers and when you cross boundaries, that's the Gigaflow is going to be that secret sauce that brings all of this together. So what I wanted to cover up on next was, what is this Gigaflow? Well, when you go in and you set up Gigaflow, all it is just another data source into Apex. So you guys should be fairly familiar with clicking on configuration, going to data. You've got your data sources, and you can see we've got Gigaflow and we've got Observer. So we've got a Gigastore hanging out there in the lab, as well as a Gigaflow. They get addressed into business groups just like you're used to. So if you see this Gigaflow only, the data source is going to be only Gigaflow. So it's pretty straightforward stuff, not rocket science. We've really strived to make this as easy to do as possible. So we've taken a lot of steps to make that happen. And your sites are still set up the same way that you're used to, where you go in and you add in different sites, either from CSV or you can add them manually. And we will cover dashboard and widget library information later on. So when you come back in, the next thing that I really wanted to point out is this filter right here. This filter is far and away a vast improvement over version 17's filter, because it allows for much more in-depth editing. It allows you to type in things in a little bit larger format, right? Instead of trying to fit things into that little box, you got the whole screen here. So if you wanted to do something like a subnet filter, but you do have to spell it correctly, you'll notice that all the different subnets pop up. And if I just wanted to look at, say, Amazon, right? Subnet Amazon. Anything that's that has Amazon in the subnet name will now pop up. So you can see I've got a couple of different sites on here listed under Amazon. Those are my two different Amazon sites. You'll notice all the utilization of everything going back and forth between the Amazon sites, as well as the interfaces that we're using to get there.
Hey, Warren.
Yeah.
Just real quick, I just want to let everybody know that this is an open chat. So if you guys go to your go-to meeting, there is a little chat bubble there. If you guys have any questions, fill them in on chat. I'll be monitoring chat so that if you guys have any questions, I mean, you can take yourself off mute as well. But if you want to use the chat, you guys can feel free to use that. We are watching that, and we can answer your questions if you have any. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's great. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that. And you'll notice here this little ... You click on that, you can edit the filter, or you can discard it. So it's a lot easier. In this case, I'm actually just going to discard it. Remove filter, and everything goes back to normal. Oh, great. We've got a question there.
No, that was just me sending that out to people. I wanted it to flash up so they knew where chat was. Go ahead.
Yep, thanks. Okay, so there is my 5-minute overview of it. Now, I always like to check stuff. Okay, so we've gone through a couple of things. Over here on the left, you're going to notice a couple. Is your sites, applications, network, UC, Gigaflow, threat map, forensics, etc. So, as was before, you click on this, and it'll immediately take you into the in-depth Gigaflow analysis. If you click on threat map, threat map has been incorporated into Apex. And so this is coming from Gigaflow, and it allows you to look at your white lists and black lists, as well as your exceptions, from Profiler. And we can talk about what Profiler is later on if you've got questions about it. But it brings in a look at all the different threats as defined within Gigaflow based off of your white lists and black lists. Now, the Forensics tab is something new. So what Forensics does is Forensics gives you a conversation layer based conglomeration of both your packets and your flow data. And we're going to spend some time looking at it later. So Forensics is a powerful new tool that we've added on to version 18 that leverages more directly information from both packet and flow and combines them together for you to be able to troubleshoot more accurately and more effectively. Custom is all your custom dashboards, and advanced, as always, is where you can just do connection dynamics, on-demand ADM, and trace extraction right from the get-go. If you don't want to go through different screens, that's a quick way of doing it. Okay. Before I move on to the next topic, which is going to be, we're going to walk through a basic scenario. Do you guys have any questions? We're going to pause for just a minute because everyone's been kind of quiet, so might as well ask away right now.
Nothing in the chat, Warren.
Nothing
so
in the
we're
chat.
good there.
I think depending on, for the audience, depending on where you're coming into this, right, some of the stuff Warren has said, maybe you're not familiar with or whatever. If you have any questions like that, or, what's ADM or whatever, please put that in the chat and we'll cover it. We want everybody on the same page.
Okay, fantastic. Again, as always, questions come up, please ask away. So one of the things that we wanted to do was I wanted to walk you guys through, a very basic scenario where you're rolling out a new application, and you can see what I did is I looked at this container, which we call a business group called application rollout, right? And so that applies a filter across all the dashboards that you're going to look at, where we're looking at a segmented portion of the data. So in this case, it's a new application that's being rolled out. And what you can see is you've got good end user experience score across the whole network, except for here in Dublin. So if we click on this, what we're going to see is packet loss and retransmissions preventing connection setup. Again, nothing bad on client, nothing bad on server, everything okay on application. And a quick word about this end user experience score is this score is based off of 25 years of experience with using packet data to detect and decode problems and help our customers get to the root cause of their problems. So based off of all that experience, what we did is we came up with an algorithm that compiles over 200 different KPIs and calculations to come up with this end user experience score that is, from 0 to 10, based off of what we see problems happening within a given site, server, application, all the way down to the socket layer. So we build it up from the socket layer and we bubble it up all the way to site. So that way, when you see something like 0.5 coming out of Dublin, you know that there is indeed a problem with the network from Dublin. So if you click on Dublin, in the same way, you'd go to network performance, because that's where, we said the problem was. And a couple of quick things, because this is new in version 18 versus version 17. You see your typical network utilization that you're used to seeing, right? See your application by volume. It's, an HTTP app where typical, 3-tier application. But if you look down here, here are interfaces, and here's your QoS values. And again, this is from the flow component. So you can go, you can see all the different interfaces that, in this case, this one user is trying to use. And you can see very little traffic is going through. It's all being set to best effort, class service 0. And there's the application delay. And you'll notice nothing's really going across. I don't have any delay values because, like we were told earlier, packet loss and retransmissions preventing connection setup. So we know what the problem is. We've identified the correct protocol that's being impacted. When we click on it, here are the 3 servers that they're trying to connect to over Amazon to be able to run the application. And you'll see a full breakdown of everything we're seeing. Again, that interface and that QoS still popping up. So it doesn't matter which server we pop onto since they're all having the same issue. And what we see are the different connections. We see 0.5 there. And this is where we have a bit of a choice. We can look at the server side or look at the client side. And I'll show you the viewpoints from either. So if we go over here, you can see you do a right click. You've got your trace extraction because we always have the packets and always allow you to get to the packets. On-demand ADM. Traffic forensics, that's that combined view that we talked about, and just skipping right into a full-blown gigaflow analysis. We would see the same thing on server. Now you'll notice connection dynamics is grayed out because you need to have the full client server to be able to see that. So you go over here to drill down and you'd see connection dynamics because then it would pull from both client and server. So in case when you're looking at these things, and I know this has come up, I know quite a few customers have asked about this, is they'll click on one of these 2 and they'll say, hey, why don't I have connection dynamics? You actually have to go over here to drill down to get connection dynamics, and that's where it pops up. So let's start with the client, and let's look at an on-demand ADM, because what I want to do is I want to pull out the fact that this client is still talking to other things successfully. It's not that it's completely brain dead. It's able to connect up to local services just fine. It's just when we go to this HTTP server that we're having problems. So when we go to any of the 3. And what you can do is from here, because you're looking at both, both sides, right? Client and server, connection dynamics does show up again. So if we click on that, what happens is a little dialog pops up, says, is this the Gigastore that you want to pull from? Of course it is. And if there's any parameters that you want to change, you have that option down here. So you click on submit, and the job goes out. Gigastore returns back the packets. And what connection dynamics is going to show you is a different way of looking at packets. So first, we start with a socket layer connection, right? So start time, duration, end user experience score, the ports for both the server and the client, the app, network delay, average client delay, average server delay, delayed data delivery time, bytes, number of packets. So this is a new way of looking at packets. Instead of digging into Wireshark and going blind looking at a three-pane decode trying to figure out what's going on, what we've done is we've arranged it in a conversational basis where you can see you've got the one side talking to the other side, SYN, SYNAC, another SYN, reset. So you can see something is, again, as we noted, preventing this connection from being established, and it's just being reset at the end. So how do we look at that? How do we discover what's going on? Well, there's a few ways that we can go about it. And the one way that we're going to talk about is how do you use Flow to be able to troubleshoot this, and how do you use this idea of GigaFlow, which uses this enriched flow product, to troubleshoot what's going on, and we're going to work our way through that too. So DNS server, if you wanted to look at stuff from the other side, you can look at things from how it pertains to the server, and what you'd see is you've got that HTTP server connecting up to Amazon. You can see some of them are being successful, obviously, because it's not the only one, but this one is in red. And you would see, again, that connection dynamics, and you'd see the same thing. You'd see nothing is getting through. So what we're going to do is, the reason that we go to GigaFlow is because we're interested in that path. We want to understand what's going on from a path perspective, and Flow is a great place to look at that. So what happens is you click on GigaFlow, and now we're into the in-depth flow troubleshooting. We can see, as we saw before on the interfaces, we've got the firewall, and we've got the MAS server. Here's everything that's going on with that guy. So we focus on the firewall. You'll notice I'm still showing application flows. So this is where GigaFlow is not your grandfather's flow. It is radically different because it not only takes flow data, but it also takes in information from syslog, from your firewalls. It can take in all your CAM and ARP tables to be able to give you MAC addresses. It takes in VPN concentrator information, SD-WAN information. The idea is anything that produces a syslog type message that we can parse, we can take in that data and incorporate it and stitch it together with the flow. This is where the advantage of this comes in. So I said, right, we started off application flows. Well, that's not really what I want to look at. I want to look at what's happening on this firewall. I can see nothing's getting through. So wouldn't it be great if I could look at the extension codes? And I'm going to switch this to a table because I like tables. So let's look at the extension codes coming off of it. What pops up is flow denied inbound ACL. Right there. That's why nothing's getting through. So this poor user trying to do this application rollout, trying to connect up to the new app, is being denied because of an inbound ACL. Now, I took a long time to go about and do that because I wanted to demo it and I wanted to be able to explain and have a few minutes of teaching. So you could actually go through this a lot faster if you wanted to. Any questions about this idea of combining Flow and Apex and how it can be utilized and the power of it? Wow, you got all 60 of you are quiet today.
Hey, Warren, it's Bill here. I thought it might be helpful to make the point. I don't know, Dave, if you have it, and I can bring it up in a minute, just to show the enrichment slide. So it illustrates the point of how the data sets are coming in from various infrastructure elements, right? And we're sort of piecing that together. It sort of ties it all together, I think, in my mind, for people that may be sort of questioning where this data set's coming from.
Okay, I can pull that together quickly. That's a good idea.
We did have a question come in on chat.
Yep.
Warren, Anoop, I hope I'm saying that right. I do apologize if I'm not. Asked the question of, can we get this data even if we're not tapping, like access denied by ACL?
Yeah.
So that's a great question. Go ahead, Warren.
Yeah, that is a fabulous question. The flow data is coming in actually from a syslog message that the firewall is sending to our GigaFlow server. So in this case, we're not tapping, we're simply consuming a flow log that's being sent to our GigaFlow server from, in this case, the ASA firewall. In terms of packets, you don't have to tap to get packets. We'll take in span ports. We'll take in anything from any one of the packet aggregators and like the Gigamons, Ixias, AppCons of the world, packet brokers, etc. So great question. Okay, so I think Bill had a good idea about showing what does this look like. I just have to find.
If you need it, Warren, I actually have it up. I can share it if it makes it easier for you.
Yeah, that would be a lot easier than me trying to find it.
If you want to make me presenter, yeah.
Sure.
Then I'll let you talk on it. Give me a sec.
Just have to find it, Bill. Fortunately, the W's are near the end, so you're easy to find.
Okay, great.
All right. You've got the slide. The slide works.
Let me bring it up for you.
Okay. So this goes into that idea of stitching, right? So enriched flow takes normal flow and combines it with elements from different data sources. In our case, we can take in SNMP to grab CAM and ARP tables from different routers and switches to grab that MAC address and the interface. And that comes in really handy when you have to set up profiles, right? Because then we can identify MAC addresses and say, these MAC addresses can only operate off of these ports. User identity, where we're going to be able to pull in AD or LDAP information to be able to put in usernames and be able to search for folks on usernames. And so, you know, for example, you know, you've got a guy walking around a plant on his iPad and moving around from access point to access point, and perhaps his iPad is infected with some virus or whatever, and you need to track down his username and find out what's going on. So you put in his username, and you'll see all the devices that he's currently talking to, and be able to identify them more accurately. Syslog and session and syslog.
Does that integrate with Cisco ICE?
So we would have to be able to put in usernames. So I'd have to check if Cisco ICE can, if we could put a snare on that to be able to bring in the data. So let me get back to you on that one.
Syslog ICE might be able to be generated and sent automatically.
Exactly.
So I think with Cisco ICE, we should be able to receive that information.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So session and syslog data as well can be brought in. Okay.
So another question just came in from Timothy Robson. Should be able to send. Oh, he's helping answer the question. Yeah.
Yep.
He's saying that so that it should be able to be sent via PX Grid. If everyone's watching their chat. So thank you, Timothy, for that.
Fantastic. Okay, session and syslog, of course, information can be brought in. Bill, did you want to go to that next slide that's got the where it kind of walks around the edge of it?
I think this deck I'm using, Warren, this is the only slide. Let me just check real quick.
No problem.
Yeah, I think.
No, I like the other one that shows all the different data sources where you're showing the cloud and everything like that. But if you don't have it, it's no big deal. We can.
I thought that was the slide right before this one in your deck.
There it is.
Yeah, that one.
So I kind of like this one because it shows how here are all the different flow sources, or an example of all the different flow sources that you can bring in. And the one that I'm going to bring up real quick is this packet broker information, where a lot of these packet brokers can produce application level information. Especially Gigamon produces something like 4,000 different fields that we can consume to be able to read application information based off of their flow records. So again, wireless APs, firewalls, etc., proxy servers, LDAP, there's IPAM asset management. So great. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate you sharing that. If you guys have any questions about this, please let us know. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. So going back, here's that inbound ACL. And again, this is coming from log information produced from those ASAs. Okay. So I'm a little bit behind, but that's okay. What I wanted to do next was, first of all, before I move on off of the standard dashboards that we've been talking about here, and everything I've shown, by the way, is out of the box, comes with the product in terms of the dashboards. Do you have any questions that I can answer about what we've done so far? Okay. All right. So one thing I wanted to cover up on was some of the custom dashboards. So, and in my opinion, this is one of the most powerful features of Apex because we all troubleshoot things differently. We all have a different way of understanding and viewing the network or the applications. And so the ability to create a custom dashboard to look at something in the way that we want to is powerful. And what we've done is we've made it as easy as we could to be able to do that. So I want to take a quick look at one of this VoIP dashboard that I created, where I've had several customers come and ask, you know, I really want to break out what my QoS values are based off of site, based off of interface, and a correlation to my VoIP calls. So we've got all the VoIP call records down here. We have the class of service that's been set, the device that it goes over, the AS number, because I wanted to see if it would break across an AS boundary, number of bytes sent, packets total. And I happen to know that some of our customers have been asking, hey, Warren, I really want to be able to see AS numbers. And this actually comes from Flow. So this is a flow-based information, is grabbing the AS number as well as the class of service setting, IP address, etc. So what you're able to do from building these dashboards is to put together all these individual widgets, right? A widget makes up a dashboard, and combining them together to be able to illustrate and drill into the information that you're looking for. So if we take, and we're just going to take one of these calls, I'd like to find one that doesn't have a great score, but we'll just grab this IP address. All right, so if we type in IP, put in the address, and what we're going to do is we're going to break out, oh, he only has CS0. I should have grabbed one that had a different number. But if he was experiencing problems, and it looks like he was, we can see that we're sending everything across without any priority. And this is where I wanted to drill into traffic forensics. So what you can do from here is, okay, I want to see a combination of everything this guy's been sending from flow and packet information combined. So there's all the RTP traffic. There's all the SIP setup, DNS, UDP, da-da-da-da-da-da. And so what we've done here is we've combined all the different powers of packet and flow together. So if I wanted to see all of his RTP sessions, right, you do a left click, and I can look at it from a conversation basis, from a QoS value. Now, we looked and saw the QoS is set to 0. From a device, in other words, what pieces, what infrastructure devices is this going over? From an address standpoint, in other words, MAC address pairs, client MAC addresses, because remember, I'm pulling that from the CAM and ARP tables, and from a basic session level viewpoint. I'm more interested in conversations, so I want to know who he's talking to over using RDP. And so here's the client and the server. And so what we're able to do is discern out how many bits per second he's sending, and et cetera. So if this person was experiencing a problem, we'd be able to see all the details of it and be able to troubleshoot it. And as always, you can filter and just look at this and then modify or get rid of those filters on an as-needed basis. I want to say, you know what, let's get rid of RTP. I want to see everything this guy's sending between these two servers. And if you guys remember from version 17, that used to be you click over on the filter and you get a list of the filters and you couldn't edit them. You could just delete them. You'd have to copy them. This makes it so much easier to do. It's just a quick click to edit, remove, or add in a new filter. And this is applied across the entire version 18, not just within forensics. So another one of the dashboards that, and I'm going to show the one that Dave created, looking at remote user sessions, is, Dave took and said, okay, give me a network utilization across all the different sites, a bandwidth consuming viewpoint over time, right? So this is a summary and this is over time. And that's the difference between these two graphs. Connection baseline chart. Again, it's the same idea except spread out over time. So you can see we've got utilization and then utilization again, but time-based. Connections, summary, and then time-based. And of course, broken out by site where they're going to. So if you wanted to look at everything just from one particular standpoint, let's say you wanted to look at London, you can filter current view, or you can give a breakout under this tag dashboard. What a tag dashboard does is it combines two different custom dashboards together, and it allows you to share filters. And so if you wanted to, say, go into details about London, you could just share out the details, click on that other tag dashboard. And what Dave did is Dave created VPN user experience. In other words, what are these guys experiencing? What are these VPN users experiencing across their network? And so you can go in here and see, okay, server is taking too long to respond to requests. VPN concentrator taking a little bit longer than we would expect it to, or the baseline of throughout time. So you can see all the different applications that they're using and end user experience score. We've got some retransmissions, which is a normal part of a conversation, but when they get out to something like 7,700, that might be something to look at. So 0 windows, CRC errors, etc. So
Warren, if I could jump in real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
So these are a couple of dashboards that we linked together because I was working with a real customer on a real problem, right? And they needed to see the data a certain way. This second dashboard in particular was very useful to them because then they could break out individual clients that are coming in over a particular VPN concentrator. The next workflow in this process is they were able to go up and choose one of the clients and say filter out just that one client on this same view, right? So they can actually see what applications, the breakdown of the applications for that one user. So if you could choose one of those IP addresses there,
Sure.
Warren, and just right click and just say filter, I'm sorry,
Left click, yeah.
Regular click. Left click and say filter current view, then we're able to focus in and get laser focused on this one client. And at the bottom now reflects all the applications that one client is having issues with, right? Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. But then to add to that, it seems like the network people seem to be always defending their network. And that's a challenge when it comes to remote access. Is defending the network because it's so easy to blame the network. So that's the reason I added retransmissions over time, zero window conditions, CRCs. I added a lot of TCP specific information to help these network people say, look, it's not the network. I can see the performance of the network. I can see it in the end user experience score, and I can defend my network. So let's stop focusing on the wrong thing and let's focus in on the right thing, which is actually a server problem. It's not a network issue, it's the server problem. So this is a couple dashboards that we created with this customer. This is just really the basics because I was working with a different customer with these dashboards. We actually created 7 dashboards because they needed to see the data a certain way, and all of them were linked together. Right? So we're actually showing you an example of 2 dashboards and how we can link the 2 dashboards, or we could send that filter through one of our existing workflows. But we actually had 7 different dashboards that were all linked together so they could see conversation level information. They can get more application specific if they needed to. Just understand that you're not limited to one linked dashboard. You can absolutely get as creative as you want to with how you need to see that data in a specific dashboard, right? That's all I wanted to mention, Warren. Thank you.
No, thanks. I appreciate that color because it's how you guys were actually using it. And Dave pointed out something that we wanted to share anyway, which was when you go back and you see, okay, well, this isn't a network, this is an application issue. You can send that off to your standard dashboards as well to continue your troubleshooting efforts, as well as other tag dashboards. So thanks, Dave. Really appreciate that.
Oh, you got it. Any questions on that, everybody? You can come off mute or you can use the chat. Don't forget. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so how do you build a custom dashboard anyway? Anybody want to talk about how we do that? Because we just spent the past 15 minutes talking about custom dashboards. So how do you do it? Well, it's over here under configuration. You've got widgets, you have your widget library, and you've got your dashboard library. And widgets make up dashboards. So each one of these, just click on any one of them really. Each one of these is a different widget that's been created. Now, these are all standard widgets. In other words, they come with the product, and you can add them into any dashboard. But you can also create your own widgets. And so let's take a quick look at some different widgets that we've created over time. Okay, and I'm just going to pick the hit list. The hit list is one of our customers asked us, hey, I just want to bubble up to the top on a client server basis the worst performing things the absolute worst performing client server connections. And so we came up with the hit list, and it's been updated to include sites now. So you can see it's a table. It's a very, very simple table. We did it by summary instead of by time because it just made sense on the table. Gave it 1,000 different entries, no filter. And the first thing you run into is this idea of selecting key fields. Key fields produces a context for which to understand the data coming in. So another way to think of it is this is an axis on a graph, right? So we wanted to look at application, client server IP addresses, and client server sites. And you'll notice that we've got a bunch of things that are grayed out here. So when you select different key fields, it deselects other ones based off of the fact that if you're selecting one viewpoint, these other viewpoints won't be valid anymore. So if we take off, say, IP address of client, IP address of server, and do the same thing down here, you'll notice I get a couple more things pop open. I can take off application, and add them back in. Now I'm going to hit cancel on this. Discard changes, because I don't want to save any of those things. And by this way, you can change what you see. Now, based off of the key fields that you've selected, you can select different data fields to be able to show information about each one of these things. So we want to see application delays, total number of bytes, network delays, observed connections, and I believe it got retransmissions. So Dave mentioned that he threw in retransmissions. This is where he threw it in, because that's just data. That's just information based off of the key fields, like retransmissions of an application, for example. User experience score, 0 windows. And then you can edit those fields. You can arrange them, and you can put them in different orders, and you can change the way that they're viewed. So if we go down here to, say, retransmissions, you can see I can change its name, and I can say it's a baseline. In other words, I want a historical viewpoint over time. Or I can look at it with no baseline, and I can put in these color bars, which shows the retrans over time, and I'll show you an example of that. Do the same thing with 0 windows, observe connections, application delay. You can see I switched this to performance because I didn't want to have it baselined over time. I just wanted to have straight up, how's it performing right now? Is it above threshold or below threshold? So, because you can set different thresholds for baseline and for performance charts. And of course, you can change the name. So that's, and what you do from here is after you've created some widgets for your dashboard, you go in and you click on your dashboard, and we'll just pick DB details, right? Top 20 request codes, top 20 response codes. You can add in different rows and different styles of rows. And then when you add in widgets, it's just a simple drag and drop. Let me give an example of that. And just pick one. And just drag it in and it's done. If you don't like it, delete it out. So you can see in this database one, we've got request codes, response codes, request and request totals, response codes over time, the details of those response codes, and the hit list. Any questions about this, guys?
Nothing in the chat window so far.
Okay, and of course, you give properties, name, description, dashboard filter, and I put in all these. When you put in a dashboard filter, it applies this singular filter across all of the widgets when you pull up that dashboard. So I mentioned that this was a database dashboard, so I wanted to look at SQL, for example. And that's why I put in the app SQL. But that means that, so this response codes will be SQL response codes. The hit list is going to be focused on SQL, etc. So, and hide empty widgets. Because if it doesn't return data, I don't want to see it. Why crowd the dashboard? Okay, we don't want to save any changes that we may have accidentally made. Let's see, I believe in my plan. Okay, how to build dashboards. So I do want to pause for a few minutes. I am definitely looking for questions and anything that we can help you out with. Because my next step is to move to the Gigastore. So we're going to step away from Apex and move on to the Gigastore. So before we leave Apex, this is an opportunity for you guys to ask any questions that you've got.
So okay. The question just came in on the chat.
Okay.
Brad asked, what's the upgrade path from version 17 to 18?
Sure. So for version 18, version 18 actually requires a new license. And so if you've kept up with your maintenance, we will have already sent you out the instructions on how to upgrade from version 17 to version 18. And what you're going to do is you're going to download, you're going to go out to our download site. Let me just pull that up real quick. So you come to our download site, and I just have to find it, blah, 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 platform software. And you download the various different, version 18 of Apex, Gigaflow, Analyzer, Gigastore, the different probes, and Observer Console, OMS, right? So you would download those things, and when you run them, it'll ask you to apply your new version 18 license. To move on to version 18, you will need to get that updated license. So again, if you're still under maintenance, you should already have received that license code. If you have not, please let Rob or Bill, myself, or Charlie know, since these are the customers that are on this webinar from one of those three guys. So, great question.
Yeah, another question just came in, and the question was from Sean. Is building a business group still the same in version 18?
Yes, that has not changed. So when you go in here to data and you build a business group, give it its name, the filter. We have increased the character count for this filter. I believe it's 256 characters now. You still can include different business groups inside of other business groups. And your data source, the only difference here is that you can have Gigaflow as a data source now.
Right, which is definitely a feature of version 18, which is different, but
yeah.
But building them is pretty much the same. Bob just asked, are we limited to the number of business groups?
I believe that there is a limit of 128 business groups, Bob. I think that number has not increased yet. I remember that we ran into that as we were setting this up. And you and I can talk about it offline, or when we talk about feature enhancements, that can be one of them that we make.
Yeah, Bob, keep in mind that you want to try to keep the analysis as straightforward and simple as possible, because I mean, if you're getting to the point where you're creating 128 business groups, you might want to check with Warren to see if there's a different way of doing what you're trying to do, just to make sure we're not overcomplicating things. And give you an example, I have a customer that I went in to help. They had nearly 75 custom dashboards that they built, one for each specific, critical application, or one for each group, and they didn't realize that you could use a single dashboard and just use a business group to toggle, or to use a filter to toggle, which might be an easier way of doing things. So definitely reach out to Warren to see if there's an easier way to do things. Great questions, though, guys.
Yep.
That's all the questions that have come in, Warren.
Okay, great. Okay, let me see. All right. Okay, so the next part of this was moving on to the Gigastore, and I know that people are perhaps not as familiar with the Gigastore as our customers once were when the product was new. So I understand that you guys may not know this interface very well, so I was just going to cover a couple of basics, and I want to talk about the fact that to send data to Apex, you have to configure trending. And trending is the engine on the Gigastore that allows data to be received by Apex. So what happens is, as the Gigastore writes the disk different, everything you throw at it, and you turn on trending, what it does is it creates a metadata record that is then sent to Apex for Apex to be able to consume and crunch all the numbers on. So how we set up trending is actually pretty important to how information is processed within Apex and what that information is. So covering off on that and making sure that's set up is pretty important. I did see a message come in. I think it was about ACI. Do you have any?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you there, Warren. I'm sorry. Yeah, Sean asked, do you have any ACI integration?
So in terms of ACI integration, we don't really care what about that, because as long as you can send us packets, we are able to consume the information in the same way that we've always consumed it. So I might want to ask you a follow-up question about what did you have in mind in terms of what to look at within ACI. But as far as we're concerned on the Gigastore and within Apex, they're just packets coming across. Now, I'm well aware of, ACI requires an IP address to send span traffic to now. And for that, what we'd have to do is we'd have to run it through a packet broker first, because packet brokers are able, some of them, like HC2s, Vision 1s from Ixia, and I forget the model number of the AppCons, that can accept an IP address when you want to span out traffic from ACI.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. We got it. He just asked. He just
said
remarked that he's got it.
Cool. Sean, if you do have any other questions, please shoot me an email, and we can kick it around further too. So, great questions, guys. Okay. Anything else before I pop on to a Gigastore? Okay. So let's see. Good, it hasn't canceled out my connection. So I stole somebody's passive interface on a Gigastore to be able to show this to you. I hope Pat doesn't mind. So what we're looking at right here is this is a synopsis of everything coming across on a Gigastore. So this is called the Gigastore control panel. And what it does is it gives you a breakout of, in this case, I'm going to change this to bits per second, of everything coming into this Gigastore in Sacramento. And this slider over here affects the reports down below. So if I move that slider, you see all these reports down here, you know, H2, HPS, blah, 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 port numbers, etc. And when I hit update reports, I'm then going to be looking at this time slice instead. And as soon as it completes all its calculations, it'll be remarked down here. Hopefully it didn't lose my connection since it's been sitting here waiting for an hour. And what you can do with all these different reports down below is focus on different pairs, focus on different applications in a very similar fashion that you saw within Apex, except for Gigastore, you have to move this slider around and manipulate it manually. Apex does all of this automatically, and that's one of the big differences. You know, you can go into applications and analyze what's going on. And this got hung. I bet my connection got hung. So redirect that to probe instance. Okay. Yeah, I think that's exactly what happens. My instance got hung. Update reports. Okay. And you can walk through and you can see different MAC stations that you can select, IP stations, IP pairs, and it's still updating. So let me move this over here, cancel this. So I have a feeling that I jammed up this session a little bit too much. So basic Gigastore stuff. So again, this is your Gigastore control panel. When you want to analyze packets, you click on Analyze, and it brings up that window. And I can see I have jammed up the whole thing. Let me stop this and restart it. So this is just, I'm just restarting the client. I'd gotten warnings before that my computer was running slow, so I'm not terribly surprised that it was giving me some issues. There we go. And if you have any questions about how to do this, how to, you know, create different instances and how to redirect probe instances, let me know. We can certainly do that. Certainly show you how to do it. And that is, there we go. And we'll just wait for that data to come in. So that is, you know, again, this Gigastore control panel is kind of the way that you get access to all the different information from the sliders, since the Gigastores are collecting data all the time. And the Analyze button is what you use to be able to do packet extraction and analysis, like the in-depth analysis that you can do. There it is. All right. So you can see all the different port numbers. Click on Analyze, see that part, that time range pops up, filter using selected Gigastore entries. Like if you had selected something down here, you could use that option. You can select an existing filter, and if you click on that, expert analysis and decode, you can select the UDP alarm filter that I built from before, any auto-created filters. So an auto-created filter is if you're using OMS, you can share your filters with everybody on your team. And we have a bunch of sample filters, virus filters, wireless filters, etc. Any questions about this? Okay. And the last topic actually that I wanted to cover for today was setting up network trending. So when you click on network trending and you go back in the trending, this is what is going to be sent up to Apex. So here are all the different settings. So you've got your general settings. Application performance analysis trending. This is essentially layers 1 through 4. And this you pretty much need to be able to run Apex in any efficient way. So you can see it's grayed out because you can't really change it. If you're going to turn on trending, you've got to have this one. The next one down is application transaction analysis, ATA for short. ATA is layers 5 through 7 analysis. And this is where you're going to see request codes and response codes and what's happening within a select 27 different applications. So when you want to turn this on, you select it, and I'll show you how to configure it in a minute. IPDV, microburst, trading, and VoIP. And of course, pair trending is again turned on. So for application performance analysis, APA, you can track only servers with associated ports defined. I would not recommend this. Leave this unchecked. For applications, it says track servers using blah, blah, blah. Track everything when unchecked. Leave that unchecked. If you wanted to limit it to different subnet ranges, you can certainly do that. ATA, this is where what you want to do is put in the different subnets that you want to track for layer 7 analysis. And all you do is give it a name, give it a range, 0.255.255. Oops, one too many. Oops, and I typed in the wrong thing. And then you add in the applications that you want to track. Pretty, and I'm just going to pick something simple. Just put 1 in there for right now. Hit OK. And then when you come over here to global settings, you're going to want to track by URL and track SQL statements. And then you hit OK, and it's done now. I don't actually want to save any of that. IPTV, microburst trading, VoIP, all the same thing. When you come down here and you add in VoIP, though, you'll have to tell it how you want to identify new calls. You can identify new calls from just the setups, from any RTP or setup, or for any type of VoIP packet. Typically, I use this one. I do allow for concurrent. If you've got skinny, turn on skinny. Dynamic twilight forcing, I've never used that because it's mainly not necessary. This is how we are evaluating MOS. And you can change this if you wish. But this is how we evaluate it. Our recommendation is that you leave it this way. Device IP addresses, this is a good place to put in your call managers and different servers. Caller ID determination. So when we want to identify the calls, this is how you set the priority for it, and where we're going to look to get that data. And of course, IP range filters. If you just wanted to evaluate the VoIP on a specific IP range, this is where you put it. Any questions here? And of course, before I forget, schedule, you'd want to set this to always to actually turn it on. Any questions about how you set up trending within your Gigastores? Okay.
No questions via chat.
Yep, that is correct. So those were actually all the topics that I wanted to cover for today. And so I wanted to open this up to an idea of any questions about anything regarding Viavi products or different technologies, as well as, what are some feature requests? What are some things that you would like to see added to the product after using it?
Hey, Warren, it's Bill. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. One point I wanted to make, though, when you're talking about ATA is maybe to show the impact of what that feature does. It obviously the Gigastores will trend, right? But then there's added benefit of the ATA capability. If you can show it in Apex, the difference that makes, because I think that's a good point for people to see maybe on SQL, what the ATA feature provides.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So if we go back to, if we look at this one custom dashboard, you can see request codes, response and response totals. You can see all of this. This is in ATA. This is all based off of ATA data. So when we're looking at things like if we wanted to find, let's see if there's any errors in this one. Blah, 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 blah. I don't see any. Let me look. Yeah, this particular setup doesn't have any, this one doesn't have any errors in it. But if you wanted to look at all your environmental changes, for example, you can see that we're getting a higher number of environmental change requests than we're used to in the yellow, right? And you get a breakout of where the client and the server that it's coming from. And so what you can do is you can click it the right way, filter on current view, and now I can see what this client has been doing from request and response codes within SQL over the past hour. So we can see how SQL has been responding to all the different requests that he's got. And this is only after you turned on ATA is, getting these request and response codes. So that's the impact of turning on ATA. So, we always tell people you really do want to turn on ATA to be able to analyze what's happening from a layer 7 perspective on your different applications. So you can see there's that hit list that I talked about before, and the way that it looks when broken out. But so being able to show how the server is responding in a specific way. So if there is something happening that the application folks need to be aware of, you can pull it out right here within Apex and show, look, I show an error code within the SQL environment at this time between this server and this client, because you can do a sweep and swoop where you isolate time and you can say, okay, isolate that time frame over the entire dashboard, and then you see the request and response codes, and usually you can break it down on a minute-by-minute basis for that. So you can narrow in very quickly and very accurately when different response codes or request codes were coming across. So when you do need to track down what a user was doing or what an application was doing, it's a pretty simple process to do.
Yeah, Warren, just to add to that, you know, a lot of people will, and as we advise, start off with the end user, or the, you know, our end user scoring, right, that we have. And that's good for the transport and delivery of the application data across the network. And there are times, though, right, when that score will be very high, but there is still an application issue, and that's when you would go to something like this. And the ATA is very valuable, as you can look in and see if there's errors or a change in some type of behavior of the application. So that's a very popular use case. This dashboard is something we've shared with a number of customers. If anybody would like to have some of these pre-built dashboards, please reach out to us, and we can certainly provide them. We have built for a lot of the common application types.
Yeah, I think Tracy just put in a request for, it would be great if there's a repository. Believe it or not, there is a repository on the Viavi website for custom created dashboards. And from the SE team, we need to have a conversation with folks who run the website and see if we can get some of the more modern ones put up on there. But as always, guys, anytime you want any of our custom dashboards, like Bill said, we're more than happy to share them out. Or even better, you know, have a discussion on how to build them. So.
So Warren, yeah, I think we should just open it up for questions.
Yep.
This is your opportunity, right, folks? If there's any questions on you know, the use of the platform, please let us know. You know, I think if you can ask it, it will probably help others as well. So don't be bashful.
There's no other questions coming into the chat, but this audience has been pretty good with asking questions as they came up.
That's true.
That is true. So Warren, I think this is pretty good. I think you did a great job. If there are no other questions, I think we should probably just wrap things up here.
Yep.
And you know, folks have our email addresses, right? So they can reach out to any one of the sales reps or Warren directly, and we can continue the conversation there.
Okay, sounds if there are no other questions, I will give you back, how many minutes on your day I'll give you? 8 minutes back. So thanks for your time. Appreciate you guys coming. If there's other topics that you want to get covered, please let me know, and we can cover them up. So thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Okay, I'm trying to pause. Oh.